I had no real right to be a business person. I was a school teacher, and school teacher probably gives me too much credit. I was a phys ed teacher who coached. It actually started off with my wife falling pregnant and us needing to make a bit more money because she was a teacher at university and I was in a school. And so my uncle was playing golf and I was telling him all these things. And he's like, dude, I actually own a recruitment business. And I was like, what do you mean you own a recruitment business? Ellie and myself, who would Robert Walters together, Brett, who is a communications and brand. He's been an entrepreneur his whole life. And a lady, Carol, we got together and started devising this thing. We basically made no profit for like 8 years, like made just enough money always kind of to pay bills, made just enough money to maybe hire like one extra person. In the last financial year was the first time like we made a bunch of profit and I was like, oh my God, like is this what it's all about? Even when we made all that profit for the first time, it wasn't as fulfilling as like what you think it's going to be.
So it's kind of like, it's a really exciting and energizing moment, but it's almost like, okay, the signs are there, let's move faster.
Yeah, yeah, I guess so. It is that. In terms of like our 4 original founders, there's been like lots of heartache. There's been lots of broken hearts, upsetness, good and bad. Like it's not been an easy thing.
So there was no possible compromise in terms of like who's the best person to be CEO. You didn't have like advisors or anyone to be like, how do we just change the roles here while still maintaining like shareholding? Like, was that not a possibility? It was a crossroads.
I don't know.
Hello and welcome back to the Founder Files. Today I'm talking to Shaun Raaff, a friend of mine that I've known for many years, but in the past 8 years, he's finally hit this hockey stick growth in his business as a service business, fundamentally based in recruitment, but also with loads of other consulting services and offerings on the side. We talk about really what that journey's been like, right? So trying to get to what he would attribute to the cause of that hockey stick growth is. And in that, we get into principles around customer experience, his culture, his people, his values, his principles around how it is that he engages with his customers and with his people, and really how that is the bedrock for the processes that he's developed, the value proposition to his clients, and fundamentally, how he's been able to set himself apart in the business world. We also go through just the fundamental rocky changes that have been through this journey. I mean, there's been multiple changes of shareholders. He's had, of the 4 co-founders that started, he's the one that remains at the end. And just the crucial conversations and the difficulty in navigating those conversations as the business grew and developed. And then finally, throughout this, we start talking about leadership and his views on relationships, managing conflict, how to deal with people properly, setting up teams, and then also a little tidbit at the end from a recruitment guru on some recruitment advice and just how to manage teams and manage people properly. So as the name states, Humanity, this is a very people-first podcast. And as anyone knows in the scaling journey, it's really all about people and making sure that you've got A players in the right seats, managing your culture and managing that customer experience in those relationships as you scale. So this podcast, we go into depth about this. You're going to experience a whole lot of authenticity and openness from Shaun. He leaves no cards hidden, leaves everything on the table. So I think this is going to be a great experience for anyone who's wanting to learn more about people management, customer experience. This is the episode for you. And if you are not already following the Founder Files, and this is the kind of stuff that you love listening to from authentic entrepreneurs, sharing their lessons and their experiences so that you can avoid years of trial and error and doing the same thing, then make sure that you are following and subscribing now to make sure you don't miss any more episodes. As you'll see, Shaun is also a super enthusiastic and humble guy, so let's just get straight into the stories that he has to share. Welcome to the Founder Files, the podcast that's like eavesdropping on a conversation with a successful entrepreneur over a fireside chat. Join me, Cameron Coutts, through this unique experience of unfiltered stories and insights from scaling founders around the globe as they share their ups, downs, and everything in between. How's it, Shaun? Welcome to the Founder Files, man. It's about time to get you on here, so I can't wait to share your story with the audience.
Yeah, thanks, Cam. I appreciate it. But I've watched basically all of your episodes. So super stoked that you felt me suitable to be on your program.
Yeah, more than suitable enough, man. I think the downside of being friends for a couple of years is that it just kind of like slipped my mind. So thank you for being here, and I'm glad to have you here. Yeah, so let's get straight into your story, man. So tell us about Humanity as a business.
So Humanity as a business has expanded. So we've got I guess humble beginnings. We started as a recruitment firm, and I think it probably needs a little bit more context that I had no real right to be a business person. I was a school teacher, and school teacher probably gives me too much credit. I was a phys ed teacher who coached for 10 years, and so I had like very little business or commercial or any of those sorts of things leading up into my career that started in recruitment. But it actually started off with my wife falling pregnant and us needing to make a bit more money because she was a teacher at university and I was in a school. And so one of us had to take the plunge. And I phoned a mate who was in recruitment and I said, listen, buddy, I've got to find a job now. Like, it's time. And he said, why don't you try this recruitment thing? You like people, you're a good guy. Like, why don't you give us a bash? And so, so joined a big global recruitment firm for a year. Hated being in a corporate. Like, it just wasn't for me. Like, in fact, I just couldn't make sense of like the indicators that like showed success. And so like it wasn't, it was an excellent teacher, like to like learn a trade, I guess. So like, because corporates teach you like foundationally things like really, really well. And so as a start, we started as a little recruitment business, but so to explain us now, we're a pretty multifunctional group of businesses. Humanity still has recruitment at its core. Like, we've still got an unbelievable recruitment team that does like a great job, but we've really expanded across like multiple areas. Recruitment teaches you a lot about businesses. You learn a lot about a business being involved in their recruitment, and we've been able to expand. So we've got a couple of divisions inside of Humanity. So we've got a talent acquisition or recruitment team. We've got an employer branding business that we'll get into. We've got a talent management or HR consulting wing that has a sort of tech side inside of that. So it's a division inside a division. And more recently, we expanded by the acquisition of a sort of dev house slash dev academy called Dev Shack. So it's now much more than our humble beginnings, but I think in a nutshell, that's what we are.
Yeah, it's a really exciting journey, man. And, from what you've told me, there's been a hockey stick growth recently. I mean, it's been 8 years. You've grown super quickly. But also, I mean, like, can you give us a sense of the level of scale that you're at now? Like, I mean, how many people that you have? I mean, how many, like, clients you might have? Like, what's a way that you can demonstrate, like, that demonstrates already that you're already a multifunctional business, like you said. But, like, yeah, what's the level of scale that you're at now? So we can see where you're at the hockey stick growth.
Yeah, like hockey stick, it's a funny term, but like it is like just in terms of like specifically at like a revenue level, like we've, for 8 years, it felt like a slog. Like, so for 8 years, it really was like hard work. Like, I guess like learning your trade. And like I said, like I didn't come from like 10 years of having been inside of businesses and having like learned like tons and tons of lessons. And um, if I reference I a lot, it's also the wrong thing because it's a we, like it's been a we experience the whole way. So like if I ever mention I, it has a huge bracketed we in it. But for years,
We'll call
for
it the
eight
royal
years,
eye in this context.
but it's like let me tell you that as a team human being, like who's spent his whole life inside of teams, like I understand that like I matter very little in the context of like something growing. And so like it's just a big part of like I guess who I am, and I guess the beautiful lessons that being a sports person my whole life taught me in terms of like that you can't win alone. Um Also the same reason I hated playing golf and tennis because I was no good on my own really. So but so for 8 years, so trying to figure out I guess like what we are like in terms of scale. So for like 8 years we really did like, just from a revenue, I mean, we basically made no profit for like eight years. Like, so, but we kind of like, we bootstrapped our business. I mean, I'll get into the very, very beginning bits a bit later, but in terms of now, uh, our sort of first 8 years, really like our sort of growth from a revenue and no profitability thing sort of like really like just like ticked along, and like we made just enough money always kind of to pay bills, made just enough money to maybe hire like one extra person, so it was like slow. And yeah, the last 2 years really like we've figured ourselves out. I think we've really understood like how do we good at what we do. So like at our core, like which and I'll talk about like our recruitment team a lot in this chat, but like we really have learned like how to do our trade really, really well. And in a marketplace, let me tell you that like recruitment is marred with like lots of average. And so like you really can position yourself in recruitment by being like excellent at what you do, and like in terms of depth, that's candidate and customer. But like so in the last 2 years we've really like skyrocketed. I mean like I hear people like refer to like 10x growth a lot, but like, I mean, we really have gotten like from a revenue perspective, like we've really like rocket shipped, and that's got a couple of reasons, but and that we can get into later. But yeah, like we've got 25 odd people like the last year, like in the last financial year was the first time like that I actually like we made a bunch of profit, and I was like, oh my God, like this is, like this is this what it's all about, and the funny thing about the profit piece is that like when we first like declared like our first dividend, and it was like, da 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 da, and even though I'm still not, well, I'm not a majority shareholder in our business, that's again like probably a story for later, but like the reality is that like even when we made all that profit for the first time, it wasn't as fulfilling as like what you think it's going to be, because it's like it's the journey, like it's the ride, like it's the building of something that like really drives me, like it's. And I maybe thought once upon a time that it was always going to be like a rands and cents thing that like really filled my boat, but it's actually like it's just a nice indicator that you're doing something right, and that it gives you then a bunch of freedom to be a bit more like I guess aggressive in a way, but like it definitely gives you the ability to try more things. My brain is littered with ADHD, so like I mean I'll and I've only recently like really understood that thing, but like in terms of like our growth and scalability, so like we're 25 permanently like very skilled people who work in the business. So like my business partner now like sometimes like has to take deep breaths when he sees like our salary bill, because like I believe in like trying to find like the best people to do this job, or like I'd rather pay a little bit more and sacrifice profitability, knowing that I've got like a rock star person with me, who's going to help build. Because I mean, we actually turned 10 now, like so we're 10 years old this month. It only actually really only still feels like the beginning of the journey. So this last 10 years feels like I've been in like the warm up, like I feel like I've been like in the warm up of like trying to understand all this stuff, and I feel like I'm actually like only now like entering like the game as the as an analogy, like it only feels like now, and I've had to learn a lot. So like I said, like I mean 10 years ago, like if I had to compare Shaun now to Shaun 10 years ago, I knew absolutely nothing like around like what business is. I didn't know how to read finance. I didn't know how to read accounts. I've had to like learn a lot of stuff, and so like it actually feels now that we're only actually started, and like I feel like now we're actually like in a position where we're like I've understood a bit more. I've still got a bucket shit load to learn. Like I said in my speech, I turned 40 last year, and I said in my speech, it's amazing. Like when you turn 30, you think you know everything, and I've got to 40 realizing that I know nothing. Like it's I know a lot more, but I also know how much I know how much more I don't know.
Mm.
And anyway, so yeah, so that's like hockey stick growth. Like yeah, it feels cool, and it feels like it's a lekker thing to say, and it feels I'm super proud of it, because like it's been blood, sweat, hard relationships, tough things. I mean, I was in family with I was in business with some family. I was in business with like with partners who we started together. We've now we've had partners who left, and I'm the only, I guess, like original founder left. And like I said, like the we thing is that like even though like maybe like there was sort of like real hardship in terms of like when my original partners and myself like split up, um yeah, like I still couldn't have done it without them. And I still have to be like incredibly thankful that I had people around me that were like able to help me grow. And like I said, like yeah, but it's growing, I guess, a business to like infancy into like, I don't know, toddlerhood or teenagehood. I don't know where we sit now, but like it's certainly not an easy thing. But like I do feel like we've got to a place now where we're a proper business. Like we're a business now. Like it's a good business. We've got great people. We've got systems. We've got multiple divisions and new businesses and all that sort of stuff. So like yeah. So I think yeah, that's I hope that described the hockey stick, but like that's is better, is best descriptor that I can give you.
No, that's great, man. So three things from what you were talking about that I want to get into. I'll work backwards. The first one, in terms of life cycles, very close. There's Dr. Ishak Adizes. His methodology around life cycles of businesses is like some of the best stuff I've seen. It's actually in the methodology that we use. But it starts off with courtship, then infancy, and go, then adolescence, and then prime. And then after that, there's like a decline into aristocracy, bureaucracy, etc. But like it's really that point of and just to give you a high level, courtship is when it's like entrepreneurial idea, you haven't started the business, but it's just all idea and chaos and excitement. Infancy is like where that transitions and like I just have to produce results now, right? And it's like that's where the 90% of businesses fail. Stats come from is just because the people can't transition from having this enthusiastic entrepreneurial spirit into okay, like sales and operations and delivery and just actually execute and sell. Then from there, it gets into go because now you become a business, but now you become arrogant because now you've achieved some kind of success. And so you say yes to everything and like everything's a priority. There's just chaos in every single direction. Before you've even formalized the core business, you've got like 3 other business units that you've now said yes to and that you're going ahead with. And so it's a bit of chaos and a bit of crisis. But then you get to adolescence, which is like the schizophrenic stage where you need to start putting systems in place. And there's this kind of tension between the entrepreneurial spirit. And it's like, are we corporatizing? But I know I need to standardize at the same time. And it's about really putting structures and maturing as an organization and a business. And then when you get to prime, it's like where you're able to do all of the above. Like you're extremely well oiled, you're able to still pull out innovation, but you've got almost like this innovation management of different business units and products coming and scaling and growing. So I love it because
We'll have to have another chat once we've figured out what prime feels like.
yeah, I know. It's
I
just
think it's,
very few businesses get there. Like just for the record, it's a tough place to get to. A good example I can think of is Discovery. I'd say Discovery is a good example of a business in prime.
okay. So, because I was like, the reality is that like it always feels like chaos. And it's funny. Like I had a chat with she actually a lady who used to work with me who started her own business, and so I sort of act as I guess a little bit of a mentor to her. And I said to her like, listen, dude, like after 10 years, I feel like it's more complicated today than it was 10 years. Like you know what I mean? Like so the chaos and the complication, like just like builds and builds and builds, and you get bigger to create, I guess, a little bit more chaos, and you get bigger because it creates more complexity, and like so it certainly never ever feels like, you know what I mean? Like, and I guess that's also like a consequence of my brain in terms of like, I've looked to keep expanding and keep changing, you know what I mean? Like that's the ADHD stuff, which I recognize as like a huge blessing, but also can be sometimes like quite a curse. Like I could have potentially like stuck with this one thing, that was like, we just do this recruitment, we just have this thing and we can keep it nice and small. And it could have been like like a really like, uh, I guess like like little kind of keep the keen on the road, do it like this. So like it's like and let me tell you, like I wouldn't do it any other way. Like it suits me to the ground. You know what I mean? Like I get bored super quick. Like I love solving problems. Like so that's why it's worked for me. Like I don't know if this would have worked for other people. Like because I guess like that's the blessing of the ADHD is that you're actually quite, I guess, like comfortable in chaos. Like the ambiguity and the like not knowing, all that sort of stuff is like is cool with me. Like it's and and I guess more than anything, like I'm so fucking okay to fail. Like it's another like beauty of sport is that like sports teaches you to lose a lot. Like you in any other sports team that I played at, so whether that was like, I mean, I didn't go to a big school, but like in terms of like club and, the like the cricket or the rugby that I used to play, like even if I was in a good team, you were going to lose. Like somebody was going to get you, and like in the leagues that we played at, like for Pirates, which is up the road, yeah, like you'd always come up against like some super hot university side, and it didn't matter how good you were, like those teams were going to have your number, and sometimes we were going to have to drive out to like Ramfontein on a Friday night, and you were going to get them, and they were going to be, and so losing is such a thing that you've got to understand comfort in, and know that like losing is also not the end of the world, um, because I mean that's life, you know what I mean? Like you like, I'm still to get somebody who only wins, and so that's sort of, I guess, the ADHD in terms of like being super curious, fucking wanting to fix things, wanting to, like do all these things. And then also like being super comfortable knowing that if I try to fix something and it doesn't work, like it's okay. Like keep on moving, like keep going, so anyway, so that's yeah, there've been really cool things that I've been able to take out of my life that I guess that have really helped me as being I guess a founder or a CEO now, like so it's yeah, so those have been really big things that have helped me get to where I am now, because let me tell you, it's not like it's hard. It's fucking hard. Like if you want to get something off the ground, I mean, I'm sure we'll dive later into like some of the stuff that we went early on. I mean, like getting to the bottom of the bank account, knowing that you haven't got any money left, and having to like figure out like how to move forward and things like that. Those are not things that you'd want to have to live through too many things in your life, but they certainly help you in terms of like the resilience of being able to like get through losses.
Yeah, that's spot on, man. I think in the early stages, the hardest part is the survival and trying to figure out growth, and then once you figure that out, it's then handling complexity as you keep growing. But I do want to go into the point that you mentioned about profit, because what that's is almost signaled in my mind is that like why that's an exciting moment, but not as exciting as one would imagine, is because it's twofold. It's like the dividend is like, it's a nice reward for a lot of the hard work that you put into, but it's also this validator that what you're doing is working. And what are you going to do then when you've got additional profit? I'm going to put it straight back in the business to reinvest into growth. Um, so it's kind of like, it's a really exciting and energizing moment, but it's almost like, it's like, okay, the signs are there, let's move faster.
Yeah, yeah, I guess so. It is that. It's like, and it also, it's a confidence thing. It's like it's like as with anything. Like if you feel like you've got something right, it like builds a confidence. And so like while you fucking scrapping it out, and like it's not a big confidence booster to make no profit. It's like like it's maybe a confidence booster to survive. So maybe it's like, well, fuck, I survived. So like that's cool. But you also become you become a victim. I think that what's hard in the world of like entrepreneurship is that you find yourself victim of like comparison. And you think like, oh fuck, these oaks look like they're making so much money. These oaks are doing this and it's profitable. And and you become like you become a victim of comparison, because you're kind of thinking like, well, is this surviving enough? Like, is this surviving like what it's about? You know what I mean? And you don't quite know. So like that's what I'm saying. Like this, to just survive for like 8 years is a long time. Eh? I mean, like, so 10 years now is half my adult life, and it's so there is something about it, but like it has, thank God, like now that we've like sort of like figured out, because like I don't know how much longer you go, or I don't know, I don't know how much longer you go like, oh my God, it's like survival. You know when people are like, you know what, I'm just gonna go back to corporate. It's like it's so much safer. I could make cash. I could da 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 da. And yeah, so thankfully, like we found a moment, and so whether that's maybe 2 years into a journey or 5 years into a journey, 8 years in our case, like there is that moment in time where you go like, okay, fuck, now I know why, like that survival was worth it. Um, but yeah, because and that is the number, right? Because and now I know that even if we don't make the same growth or the same profit or whatever, like I know that we will break through again. You know what I mean? So like maybe because we're now in like very much another like another growth. We've taken so much on. We're spending a lot of we're spending what would have been like profit money, trying to build new stuff. So we might not like have the same like profitability in the next maybe year, maybe 2 years, but I know, having now seen it once, that I can do it again. And so I think that there's cool, like the validation is the right word, like because it keeps validating like effort, like and like I often refer to like return on effort rather than return on investment. Like it's a way like I kind of see things as a return on effort. And so like now I know that the return on effort over the last 8 years has seen something really good. And now I know that I'm going to go through the next little period of time, and I know that there's going to be a return on effort, like because I've got like, and now it's my probability is much higher because I'm really surrounded by like really really good people, and I've got I think that one of the things that I've like really really understood over the last few years is being able to like bring people in that are really going to elevate you, like elevate me personally, like having really come to terms with like who I am, what are my actual strengths, because for a long time you've got to do everything, and doing everything doesn't necessarily mean that it always like works to your strengths, and now with a much much better understanding of myself, I've been able to bring people in that really do leverage me and allow me to be more in the spaces that I'm like really like where I'm really good at, which I believe are like in like I'm creative. I like to look big. I like to look wide. And now I've surrounded myself with like unbelievable executors who are like detail people. They are like super executors, like it's the ADHD's thing is to leave something half done, right? Like it's like classic. And now and now in like our brand, our consulting, our EOR business, which I didn't even mention earlier, in terms of like it's just I guess could be seen as another division, but also like the Dev Shack thing. Like we've got like highly execution orientated leaders in those spaces, and I just become like a person who like tests their ability to like to make it happen. Does that make sense? So like we complement each other really well. So like we drive each other all nuts. Like I'm like everybody's worst nightmare in this business because I'll start every conversation like Laura, like I'll start a conversation with going like, so I've been thinking. You should be like, oh my God. But it's cool, like because like without me, she doesn't push her boundaries, and without her, I leave things half done. So there's been some really, really, really amazing progress in our business because like we've now got really good players doing their strengths, and I'm most of the time playing to my strengths, like, and so I guess that's probably like if I like as we've been talking, is probably something that you could really etch the hockey stick to, because like through all those times, like you've now got to a point whereby like the right people are really doing the right jobs, and you know what I mean, and everybody can focus on like what they're really good at most of the time. I guess there's not a life where you can do the things you love all the time, but like it's about doing it like the majority of the time.
Okay. Yeah, that was actually going to be my next point, is before we go back into like the detail and the chronology of your story, I really wanted to understand what is it that you would attribute that hockey stick moments, that profitability, that clear, step change in the performance of the business. And I think that's one of them, like having a complementary team around you,
Yeah.
where you can really,
Definitely.
yeah, so go for it.
Yeah, it's definitely that. But it also like it, I know, I know what our like course, like our core strength, like our recruitment team is unbelievable. Like I know that, and like I know having been in recruitment that like finding a great recruiter is like is hard as finding, I don't know, like a super scarce developer. You know what I mean? Like it's a very, very complicated skill. Like it's much more. It's far more complicated to be a great recruiter than people would give it credit for. Like let me tell you, like it's a very, very complicated job. It's filled with like human complexity, and it's a very, very, very you don't find many people who are like really, really good at it. And so like I'm lucky that I've got a good like I've got some unbelievable guys who are behind me and behind this wall here. But so besides having like good people, and I'll talk to like each division fine, but like it's like our success will show really. It's funny, once you've showed yourself that you can do something once and you can do it again. So for instance, like if we talk about like revenue in a month in our recruitment team, and let's say it was like, at one point in time, we would have been like super stoked having made 200,000 or 300,000 rand in a month, and then all of a sudden you show yourself, oh shit, we've now consistently done 700,000 rand in a month. And then all of like, and I can't attribute it to anything other than like there's a moment in time that goes, shit, like we're doing between 1.5 and 3 million rand a month with the same team. And then you get used to doing this thing, so you get used to knowing that like, oh, that's actually the standard. Like that's that's the standard. And it's like you don't know it until you're doing it. Does it make sense? And then when it doesn't become like a lucky month, like then when we first like did like 1 million rand in a month, it was like fucking wow. But then all of a sudden, like you're doing it again and again and again. You're like, oh shit, okay. And it's the like the standard that you take yourself up to. And so like, like I'll refer lots to sport. It's my only go-to, but it's like when you start competing at a particular level, and it's like, oh, this is how we compete. Because you can compete at like a C level and not know any better. And then you get to a B level and you're like, oh shit, that C level was actually no good. Like, and then all of a sudden you're competing at like, you're in the like first division. And it's like, oh, so this is what, but you know what I mean? Like it's a thing of practice. It's a thing of like expecting that this is the level of competing that we're doing, and so it takes time and it takes practice. So, we're a services business. I don't have like a product. I don't have a thing that I build and I sell, or a software that we build and we now like scale up on software. Like we're services. And so like you've got a service at a particular level. It's like if I was if you're a rugby team or a football team or a cricket team, like you play at a particular level, and you can either like make decisions to practice harder, concentrate more, give more of a shit, and your levels go up, and I think that that's actually like one of the big things as a service team, and like as a service team, you start building your levels up, and that old saying, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what excellent looks like until you're delivering on excellence, and then you think that this is excellent, and then you can actually go more, and then you think it's like maybe, in fact, a good example would be like a runner. When you start running, you think like doing a 10K in 60 minutes is really good. And you think, so fuck, that was really good. I've just broken 60 minutes for 10Ks. And then you go train you go train harder, you meet a coach, you join a running club. And then all of a sudden you're doing things a bit differently, but then all of a sudden you go to a race and you do it in 50 minutes. You're like, holy shit, that was really good. That's much better than my 60 minutes. And then you go further, and then all of a sudden you're breaking 45, and then you're breaking 40. And so like in our world, that's kind of how I think it's worked. Is like we've got better because we've, as a team, decided we wanted to elevate, and it's decision oriented. Because let me tell you, it's not for free. It's like you got to fucking graft, you got to work, you got to make things happen. And so like it's like none of it's for free. But like when you start elevating your standards as a collective, all of a sudden results appear, so it's that old process versus results orientation. Like we became like really fixated on our processes in terms of like, what does excellent look like in our world? Like, you know what I mean? Like from the smallest things in terms of like our data capturing of like candidates and CVs. Like, so what does small things, what does excellence look like in terms of like our candidate journeys and moments that matter to that candidate? What do small things work? And let me tell you, what we do now as a service is tenfold what we did 5 years ago and 20-fold what we did 10 years ago. But and at that time, we didn't think that we were doing it badly. It wasn't, and it's not like you have this idea that you're not doing it that well. It's that you don't know how much better you can do it until you're doing it. And, we've had people join our business. So we've had, as our brand grew as a strong brand for like a really good place where good recruiters can like do well, be safe, have a good place to work, blah, 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 blah. When you bring them people in and then you learn from them. And I mean, I say like, I learn lots. Like, I think one of my great assets is that I like have a very like low ego in terms of like having to think that like I know everything. And as people come in and they challenge what I thought was good and they make it better, I'm like, oh, fuck, that's cool. Like, oh, we can do this better. And so anyway, and that I think snowballs, there's like a compounding effect. And maybe, and if you look at like a compounding impact on like the way you want to perform, that's what's happened to us, I think, and like I said, like it's not like because of some grand strategy that I had, like I told you, I was a sports coach. And what do you do as a sports coach? And is you start with a team at this particular level, and you work really hard, and you start pushing and you're pushing and you're pushing and you become better, and you push and you push and you push and you become better, and you push and you push and you get better, and like, anyway, so it's a cool cycle. And this conversation has made me think of it quite differently, actually. Like, I've never necessarily like had this as a way of which I would have explained it, but like it's come out quite nicely. And like I said to you earlier, I was a bit nervous to do this, but like I'm super happy with how that's come out, because I think it's a really true reflection of how we've grown.
I just want to pause here for a moment to share something that I have built for you as the audience. You may or may not have heard about this before, but it is the Founder Playbook. It is an assessment and a roadmap builder over the next 30 to 90 days to help you identify where are the gaps in your scaling journey, right? I think as entrepreneurs, we all have an element of trial and error as we're building our own unique businesses. But doing over 130 episodes of the podcast and working with 150 clients, there are certain patterns and themes and levels of excellence that I've seen in how people think about their customers, their vision, their structure, their people, their cash management, execution, and their own self-management and self-mastery, that I've built an assessment to help you see where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, and how you can accelerate your scaling journey and take a bit of chaos out of it at the same time. So this assessment is entirely built for you. It's going to help you identify where those gaps are, but also suggest some next moves so that you can implement immediately in the next 30 to 90 days. Build that into your own personalized roadmap that you can customize. You can assign responsibilities and identify the right people in your team to handle each of those next moves. And you can download that. Or end to end, it takes about 15 minutes. There's no email, there's no sign up, and the link is below. So if you want to turn these insights from these podcasts into action, the Founder Playbook is the best way to do it. I hope you enjoy it, but for now, let's get back straight into the conversation. So I want to go back to that in more detail, because it's like, I think if I'm trying to pull out some principles that I could maybe apply in my business or the audience could in theirs, I think a core component is having like a team of A players, but then also there's just a journey of the forming, storming, norming, performing, right? It's like as a team, you kind of just need time to start gelling. And I think that's part of it. But you started mentioning processes. I'm curious to know if you started going after different clients, going for higher ticket items. Like if you had to boil it down to like 3 practical things that you can try and teach me now about what is that you did to go from like 200 or 300 grand a month to like 1.5 to 3 million with the same team. Like what are those things that you would say made the biggest difference in how you implemented them?
One of the things that I think has happened is that like when you start recruitment's a crazy industry. Like I don't know, there must be 5,000 recruiters just in Joburg. And so like the competition to get into customers is really high. You've got, all these big recruitment businesses that are like, when I was at the big recruitment business, like it was like, you're going to make 20 or 50 business development calls in a week. That's like, hey, you're speaking to Shaun, yeah, I'm phoning you from this really cool business. Give me a shot, So the getting into the marketplace is really difficult. But when I was talking to you about like how you can compete and the things that you do and the excellence that you matter. So like, it's like recruitment could be easily seen as a game that goes, you get a good CV, you send a good CV, you help a person through an interview process and they get a job, But it's so much more complicated than that. And let me tell you, like one of my best consultants here, like does the same amount of work for like a PA to what she does for a CEO. But what she does for her customer in the job that she does for the PA is she shows a customer like how much depth she goes into in fulfilling this role for this business. And like, like you and I've had conversations where I think that recruitment's the most underrated and most obvious place to like get like to elevate your business. Like businesses and recruitment is still done like it was like 30 years ago. Like it's like we build a job spec and we we build a job spec, we send it out, we use agencies, we use LinkedIn and have a two interview process. We get into negotiation, we get, so there's not been a lot of change in how we bring people into businesses. And I think that our consultants, and this is a long-winded answer, but forgive me, but like what we did is that we created depth. Like we don't believe in like transactional interactions. Like every interaction it must have depth. Like everything must have depth. Every conversation, every interaction, all these things. So like the depth of what we've done has really significantly changed. So like service is what we do. And I was also from a good mate, a guy called Rob Fleming, introduced to hospitality like way before this new book that just came out, that Unreasonable Hospitality. But like I'd understood the hospitality mentality like from like 2 or 3 years ago when Rob introduced me to this. And that like hospitality thing, which is like you have so much power in how you make people feel. And so like how you make your customer feel through an interview process, how you make your candidates feel through interview process, the depths that you have to go to. So like the data, the information, the things, you know what I mean? So like, so the thing that we did is that we went deep on service, like, because it's an easy game to be transactional in, and it's an easy game for you to kind of do it the way that everybody else does it, and I can't remember which podcast I was listening to, but the guy was saying that like, it was something about like, if you want to show me like that people live their values, it's what they're prepared to give up on to live their values. And from our perspective, we are prepared to be slower, to do less, to do things to ensure that like the excellence and the hospitality and the depth of what we do is like really felt. And then therefore, like what's happened is our customers over time have given us much more important roles. We are competing less against other agencies. We are making, we are we're the go-to person, or like, and it's funny, like recruitment's also like got a bunch of risk attached to it in terms of that, like people don't necessarily recruit with humanity. They recruit with Kelly or Tessa or Junior or Bjord or whoever's like the consultant, which is, like I said, it comes with risk, but that's my job, is to give those guys the home that they don't want to leave. You know what I mean? Like, so my job is to ensure that like humanity is the best place to want to work as a great recruiter, because let me tell you, I know that they could go work anywhere. This I know. But my point being is that like, so your question was like, what are the things that we've done? And I think that like depth, like, so from a services perspective, like really leaning into like hospitality and like understanding that like for anybody changing a job, it's one of the biggest decisions or some of the few big decisions that they've got to make in their lives. And for companies, it's one of the biggest things that they do. It's bringing somebody into their business. So go deep. Do not worry about what the fee says at the end of the thing. If you have got a gut feeling that thinks that even though this candidate is a shoo-in, that you have a feeling that there's something not right, that we go to our customers, we say, shit, this is going to sound crazy to you, and we know that you are wanting this person, but there's something that, whatever it might be, you know what I mean? And so like, so to be like completely transparent in terms of, and again, that also comes with like trust in terms of your customers. So when our customers are not like pitting us up against like 10 other recruitment agencies to Foster's finger first and shove CDs down the throats, and it's a flipping war to the end, and it's dog eat dog and blah, 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 blah. Like, I reckon like 90% of our business is done like exclusively with customers who really trust my consultants, and you know what, you could compare that to most services in any business, right? Like like recruitment, it's any service, whether you are a strategy consultant or an IT consultant or whatever it might be. But I think that like acts like, yeah, I mean, integrity is not up on my wall. It's not one of the values, but it's like that sort of trust, that your customer has in you, because you're prepared to not win right now so that we can win together later is it's been one of the big things. Because let me tell you that if you want to win now at the expense of your customer, they will find that out. There's a great by Adam Grant, that Givers and Takers, and or Give and Take, and it's probably one of the most influential books I probably ever read for myself, which was like, givers, matches, and takers, and like eventually, like, the taker always gets found out. If you want to take from your customer, like, he will find that out and he will leave you, because there are 5,000 other recruiters who will take your spot. And so, yeah, so I think that sort of like that thing in services must be that you must be prepared to probably win a little bit slower at like the expense of like a cash win today, which is easy for me to say now, right? And again, you see, that's also like, as you grow, those become much, much easier decisions. When I was trying to pay payroll and we were like, oh my God, like let us look how much money we've got in the bank and how much do we need for the 25th? Those are hard decisions, and it's a much harder value to live by. That I promise you. Like, there's nobody on earth when it's like you've got to scrape the bottom of the barrel of the money pit, and you've got to now make a decision that probably suggests that you're not going to make this money from this customer now. Hard, and it's and again, like you got to go through those phases of like survival to understand like how to be really, really good, is like in not having to worry about like this deal. This deal's not the one. It's the 10 others after that are like super, super important.
You know how I like to think? So I'm going to think this through at like a framework process level to see like how this can be like, take what you've just said and put it into a repeatable format, because you've given the depth. But I think the first element was, we're playing the long term game first, right? So we're playing the long game. We know that we want to be we want to have partnerships with our clients. We want to be highly trusted. We want to have long term relationships with them. The next point that you thought about is, what is the customer experience that we want to deliver to them? Like, what is and from there is, it's like, well, let's look at the entire industry and how people operate. It's actually quite easy to differentiate ourselves on customer experience with a bit of effort, because everyone is, it's like, you almost associate recruiters with like real estate agents in the sense they're just trying to get this deal over the line. They don't care if if you are partially getting screwed. Is like, if they're fulfilling the deal, then job is done. It's because the problem, that's just how the incentivization model works, is the fact that it's like, we get paid the moment that there's a placement. And the point is, where we're not incentivized is for the quality of customer experience and the quality of the hire. And so But that's playing the long term. The short term game is, I know I'm going to I'm going to get this cash through the door if I just manage to get a hire in. But the difference is like, am I going to keep this client forever? And am I going to increase my contract size, my value of that client? How am I going to do that? And that's the point of it's like I might lose a couple of these hires in the short term, but the ones that I do get right, we're going to stand out as the recruiters that gave the best experience, gave the best quality candidates, consulted with them, showed an interest and willingness to go the extra mile, go that level of depth. And so it's that customer experience and prioritizing what they wanted, and the thing is knowing what's best and almost resisting that short-term temptation of the incentive model for the long-term benefit of like a trusted relationship is exactly what's led to the success that you have. Because now you don't have to propose for work. Now you don't have to like ask for work or go for business, because you said like 90% of your clients now only use you. So you've got that basis that you can build off of. And then I think there's a book by Simon Sinek, The Speed of Trust. And it's like, because there's so much trust within the team and with your clients, you're able to operate so quickly, is because there's so many decisions that can happen. That's allowed you to just build up that momentum. So the first element is prioritizing the long term over the short term. Very difficult in an early stage business, but like quite crucial for sustainable success. Then prioritizing the customer experience in relation to all of the other customer experiences they can get from our competitors, and how is it that we can give a better one, right? And especially in the early days. And from there, it's like, how do we give a better customer experience? And that's what led to us winning on that customer experience. And then from there, how like we're now able to compete and succeed is the fact that we are just the best and earn that reputation as the best, because inherently, as part of that customer experience, means better quality of delivery at the same time. And the point is, it's like, you couldn't have sold that from the beginning. You had to prove that in time, in seat, with the relationship with the client, and that's where the patience has paid off.
Dude, it's like that thing that I said earlier. It's like, I think that one of the hardest questions you've got to ask yourself if you're in a services oriented environment, and maybe even in a product environment, is that like, what am I prepared to leave on the table today that makes tomorrow better? And I think it's easy to want to take off as much out of the table, you know what I mean, and put it, you know what I mean, like that, sort of like gluttony or greed or whatever. Like, I think that is probably the fall short of a lot, of a lot of businesses that they try and take as much as they can, and
I think outside of it is
and
also
I'm
just
like, I
fear.
can't say this.
Outside of gluttony and greed, is it's like, in the early stages, I don't know where I'm going to get paid. So the choice of doing something generously is also often difficult.
Yeah, it's 100%. Like, so, and let me tell you that I don't want to sit here and say that we've always not been in a transactional moment and we've done it. I don't think it ever helped us, so I'm not trying to sit here and go as some, all saint that says oh, we've always done it this way. That's not the truth. Like, we, you know what I mean? Like, I definitely would be able to look back in our businesses, like either as myself, because I mean, what was quite fun is I've been able to do every job, maybe not as best or not as well as anybody else, but I've been a recruiter. I've done stuff in the consulting. I've been part of the brand stuff. I've been, and the Dev Shack stuff, that's way out of my pay grade. But the reality is that I know that yeah, that instinct to get the quick win or the cheap win or the take for less, whatever, is an easy one to take. That's hard. Not to look over, you know what I mean? And I think that also comes with a bit of maturity. And like I said, that also comes with the fact that now I can lead differently. I can lead differently knowing that we've got a really good business. And so the security of our business is now in a really, really strong place. And that security wasn't so now I can firmly say that our security is built on our own balance sheet. But 2 years ago or 3 years ago, when we had a sort of the last founder exit, I went into business with a guy who had a really, really good, but he's almost become the big. So even though we've got our own group of companies, I belong to another group of companies, and that balance sheet was also the balance sheet that allowed us to play the game with a long-term view rather than a short-term view. And I think that was a huge game changer for us. And so that's something that I didn't mention earlier, that probably held a huge amount of value as to why we've also grown in the last 2 or 3 years, is because I think from an equity partner perspective, like the guy who's, the business that now owns the majority of us, has allowed us to play it knowing that like it's not survival. You know what I mean? Like we'll survive. We'll pay salaries. Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect segue to now go into like this shareholding co-founder equity partner journey, right? So I think kind of talk to me from the beginning and the get-go of how the business started, with who, and then I just want to unpack that and how that's evolved over time, because it's not often that you find someone's got a private equity partner in a recruitment business, right? So I think there's some interest there. But like, let's start at the beginning, right? So how was the business started?
I think just to make sure that the caveat of this whole thing is that, let me tell you that when you start anything like relationships, business, all that stuff, like you never ever like start off together thinking that anything's ever going to go wrong, and you kind of like think we're going to walk into the sunset together. And I know that over the last 10 years, like in terms of like our 4 original founders, there's been like lots of heartache. There's been lots of like, yeah, broken hearts, upsetness, like good and bad. Like it's not been an easy thing. And this is the thing that I've been thinking about the most while coming into this podcast, because I want to make sure that I don't like misrepresent the whole, like I don't want to misrepresent it at all, because like, let me tell you, like when we started, so like I told you, I've been in the big global recruitment firm for like 10 months. So I had 10 months of recruitment experience. I was working with a lady in that business. She was killing it as well. And so like there were the 2 of us working at Robert Walters. I then played golf with my uncle, like random golf game, talking about what we're doing. And I'm like, shit, these corporates are full of shit. Like it doesn't matter like that you make this much money. Like when you get your performance review, it's like you weren't on the phone for enough hours. You didn't send out enough spec CVs. You didn't blah, 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 blah. I was like, this sucks so much. And like, I wasn't super stoked. Besides the fact that my office was in Santon and I lived in Four Ways, and I had to leave at 5 o'clock in the morning and only got home at like 8 o'clock every night. So that was a
So I just want to
disaster for another
interject
day.
there,
But
because I
like,
think that's such an important point to raise. That like the experience that you had as an employee and what you hated and what you were getting measured on, I intuitively pick up that you're not doing that in your team now. This is not about the volume of CVs. It's not about like how many hours you're spending on the phone. It's about like the quality of the candidates, the quality of the customer experience, how stoked they are. And yes, obviously, like the results are going to matter. But the point is like how good are you as a recruiter, not how efficient are you as a recruiter.
it's interesting, but because I understand why corporates act that way. If I had 200 people, maybe I would have the same mentality that, like, like that you go like, well, if you've got, it's too hard to, I guess, scale up to that level and not have the controls in place. I don't know. And I said this not knowing.
The reason why I've got doubts is because I find that the customer experience that you have and want to continue delivering is quite paradoxical with those KPIs and metrics. Like that's totally incentivizing speed and efficiency. This is totally incentivizing quality. And like I think yes, they will need, like as you scale, needing to mix in the middle, but like inherently they're 2 philosophies.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I've we could sit here for days, but we'll go back to the founder story. And so, so my uncle was playing golf and I was telling him all these things. And he's like, dude, I actually own a recruitment business. And I was like, what do you mean you own a recruitment business? He's like, so he had a marketing and communications firm, and they had done all of the like brand and build and website and philosophy and positioning and of this company called Humanity. And Humanity existed for like a year or two. And after a year or two, the people who had originally founded Humanity had kind of, I don't know if like gone bank is the right word, but they like, it had failed as an entity because for whatever reasons, right? But the point being is that as payment for like all of the brand and the strat and the my uncle ended up with this brand. He ended up with this thing that was like a dormant being. It had a website. Yeah, it had a website. It had a cool philosophy, by the way. Like humanity's original philosophy was that you could match candidates to business using like a Jungian type matching thing. It wasn't. It certainly wasn't HPCSA approved, but it was a really good. It was a good fit. Like it was a really cool thing, and it was super interesting. And so Ellie and myself, who were Robert Walters together, Brett, who is a communications and brand, he's been an entrepreneur his whole life, and a lady Carol, we got together and started devising this thing, and like we were going to go and between Carol and Brett, they'd put in a bit of money because at that stage I had I think a 8-month-old or a 10-month-old son, and definitely wasn't in a place where I couldn't earn any money for like a period of time. And so Carol and Brett had put some money in so that we could earn a salary for 3 months. So we had like 3 months of money that was like, cool, you got this much money before our money runs out of what we're going to put it in. And off we went, so the four of us went, and at the end of our 3rd month, when all the money was going to kind of like go, like we made our first big placement, and that particular customer was a legend. He even paid us early so that we could like cash flow and blah, blah, blah. So there was a cool story just in terms of like knowing that. And we made our placement, I think the day before Christmas on our first year. So we started in September. We made our first placement like on like Christmas Eve. It was like all the stars needed to align for us to be like, I guess that, because that could have been the end, I guess, because we could have been like, oh, that's it, like I'm not gonna lie, like in those 3 months, I definitely had all my options open. But I had kind of had a couple of conversations with like other recruitment businesses, and in case this thing fails, like because I knew I wasn't shit at this thing. Like I didn't have a lot of experience, but I knew I wasn't a shit recruiter. Like I knew I could recruit. Like I do love people. I do love solving problems and blah 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 blah. So I kind of knew I had a fallback. Like I could have fallen back, and I could have been a recruiter. I was young, ambitious, and hardworking, and likable, and blah 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 blah. So anyway, so we as an original sort of four like got going, um, and we all kind of knew each other, but we weren't like necessarily like intimately. Obviously, my uncle and I were like, obviously that's family, but like we didn't really know each other that well. But after about a year, maybe a year and a bit, uh, the way in which Carol approached business versus the way that Brett, because they were the two like majority shareholders, like right up front. Ali and I were kind of like, we were going to kind of earn our shares over time. Like there's a whole lot of stuff that I guess like with hindsight and learning and that sort of stuff, like I would have maybe approached it differently, maybe not. I don't know. Like I was, I just wanted to do something cool. I wanted to like, I was prepared to give it a bash. Uh, Carol left after about a year and a half, and so we re-established like. Then it sort of we were down to 3. So it was Ali, Brett, and myself.
Sorry, just on that, why? Was that because of personal reasons?
Yeah.
Was that because of just a bit like motivation?
No,
Wasn't performing?
she had run her own. So no. So she had run her own. She was a one-man band recruitment person. So she'd been in recruitment for a long time. She ran. So she had like a super successful one-man band recruitment business for years. And so Brett had convinced her to come to this like young, ambitious team because our brand really was cool. Humanity was different. Matching people to businesses, like it was different. Like it was exciting. Let me tell you, I didn't struggle to get meetings with customers to talk about this new way of recruiting. Like, do I think that it worked that well? Like over time, we're like, but it got you in the door. And what people want in recruitment is a bum on a seat. They just want somebody eventually. Like, how the fuck you do it? Maybe less important. As long as you can find them the right person, whether your Jungian-based matching tool is perfect or not, didn't really matter that much. But it certainly got us in the door. And it's like people were like, oh, that's interesting. I like this is different. It's more than just a CBN, and so and after about a year or two, like the thing with Carol, like I don't think it had any, like I think Carol also like was like, oh, now I've got to manage these 2 kids, like it was da 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 da. So like I don't think it was like with any bad blood. So Carol went back on her own, and so she continued, and I haven't been in touch with her for ages, but like she, I think moved to the UK, but she went back on her own, and like there was no bad blood. It was all good. And then after maybe within like the time frames, it all feels like a big blur, but like maybe 3 or 4 years in, maybe 3 or 4 years in, like what had happened was Ellie and I were the sort of like working partners, and then Breakfast is sort of like a silent partner, and it was hard, man. Like let me tell you, like it's still like it was probably like, in fact, I'll tell you, at that point, like when it was like, we knew that between Brett, Ali, and myself, there was probably not going to be a long-term future, just for, call it values, call it perceived effort, call it perceived input, whatever you want to call it, right? Like, it's like all of these things is perception, like it's not necessarily about like absolute fact. And at that point, I actually started like thinking like, well, fuck, maybe I've got to go. Like, cause I didn't want to fuck up my relationship with my uncle. I love him dearly. I still do. We've mended all things fine, but so I didn't want to fuck this thing up, but I also loved this thing. Like, I really felt that I'd worked really hard to like make this thing. And so I believed that I wanted to be a part of it. But in the same breath, I was also like prepared to go. Like, I was prepared to be like, and so Ali and I sort of, because we were working partners in the business, found we raised some money through some other people. So we raised some money. We made a deal to Brett, and we said, look, for this much money, we want the business, like, or we can leave, And so like, it was a difficult period, because those are hard. Let me tell you that it is ambiguous. It is never fact based. It's always emotional. It's like, how do you value a business? Like, how do you value what this is worth? Its services, like, and so I don't look back on those things with like a huge amount of like happiness or like joy or whatever, because it was like, at that point in time, it like really, really like cocked up my uncle and like our relationship, like, because he felt like he'd been fucked over, and maybe he was rightly feeling that way. And again, like, I don't know, maybe one day I'll go up to the pearly gates and I'll have to do, but like, it still was a very difficult period of time, because like I said, when we first met 4 years before that, it was like we were fucking high-fiving and popping champagne bottles, going like, we're going to make this together, and then it doesn't work, and for whatever those reasons are, like, perception is reality, and like, you only live in your own reality.
Well, it's also so difficult because inherently at that point is that the person who's wanting to sell their shares versus the person wanting to buy them, they've got directly competing incentives. The person wanting to sell wants to maximize the valuation. The person buying wants to minimize it as much as possible. And it's like, I think win-win is possible in those situations, although very difficult.
I doubt it. It's like, specifically in services, but like, we had no value.
Yeah.
Like, our value was me selling stuff, or Ali selling stuff, or and it was his perceived value of like having done this brand and having brought us in. So and everything deserves something. And so like, what that is, like, I don't know, like, God will only know, you know what I mean? Like, and and I'm not necessarily like God oriented, I'm quite like universal, but like, whatever like moral compass you want to, is going to be, And so like, and I said, like, you try and do things with this like purer as pure a way as possible, but that's not always possible. Like, it's like, because at the same breath, at that I can't remember if I had more kids yet or not. I don't think so. But like it was still like my livelihood. I don't come from a bucket load of, I'm not sitting on a trust fund somewhere. Like, I had bills to pay. I had a kid to feed out of, so there has to be a selfish incentive in this, which is like, you got to look after self. But in the same breath, through that whole thing, I was also still prepared to go. Like, I was also prepared to go find another job, because like, whatever, like, I've got much more important things to do than like, like feed family and pay my bills, than get into like a scrap of ego, you know what I mean? And so anyway, so it was quite shit. Ali and I moved on with new equity partners, because we had gone and found people who had bought Brett out. And then, yeah, 2 years, maybe like, like 4 years ago, like, it was interesting. Like, Elle and I had been deep in the trenches together for a long time. And it's interesting how, like, and I would imagine it's very similar to like any relationship. Like, we'd kind of like grown a little bit apart. Like, so like, I kind of, and as we grew, I guess, as individuals, our own value sets, our own perceptions, and like, I don't foresee any of these things as right or wrong. Like, I don't see it that way. I think it's like, it's just different. Like, so the way in which I wanted to go and the way in which she wanted to go became like very different. And because we, at that point, were the sort of two, well, together we were the majority shareholder, but like, like at that point in time, like, and I guess like, if I'm trying to give like a real honest account of like what it's been like to like be in part of like building a business, these are real things, you know what I mean? And I think that like, you never ever get into something thinking that it's going to go wrong, or that you're going to split apart, or you're going to change as people. Like, I mean, it is what it is, like, and it happens. But um, when I got to that point with Elle, and it was just like I said, it was just like I saw it this way and she saw it that way. Like, it wasn't, it wasn't to say, yeah, like I still don't actually believe that it was like about who was right and who was wrong. But like the point being is that I got to a point where I was again at a huge crossroads, going like, shucks, if I'm going to be in it, like I don't want to be in it with you anymore. So like I said, like Els and I had a real heart to heart debate. Like, listen, bro, like it can only be one of us, because at that point we were kind of like two leaders together, so we were kind of like joint CEOs. So like we'd never really necessarily like assumed a position of like CEO or COO or this and that. So we'd always kind of like co-led it. Like it was like we were like 50-50 partners. And I guess that's a lesson too, that like in leadership, it's hard to have like two cooks in the kitchen, maybe, and that's kind of the point and that was my personal feeling of it. And we'd had a discussion that said, well, look, man, like if you, I, it was like, if you really want this, then you can buy me out. Or if you don't, like, I can then look to try buy you out. Like we've got to like an inflection point.
So there was no possible compromise in terms of like who's the best person to be CEO. You didn't have like advisors or anyone to be like, how do we just change the roles here while still maintaining like shareholding? Like, was that not a possibility? It was a crossroads.
I don't know. I felt, and it would assume that if I'm the last man standing, that I've been the common the common thread in terms of like it being difficult for other people to work with. But like,
Well, the proof is in the pudding. Look at the results of your business now.
yeah, but again, that's also like, that also is not true, because like for all those years, it was like a lot of, what I mean, like you got to set foundations,
No, sure.
So like I said, I
Or
didn't want to ever
correlation
like
with
take away.
causation, but there's correlation.
Yeah, I never ever want to take away the value that Brett and Ali both made as a part of this business. Like they were both a big part of it. So like uh there's definitely not a like correlation between an exit and an up. It's more about like foundations, and you can go. But I think that the up is more about like how with the equity partner that bought Ali out. Because the fact is that I couldn't buy Ali out. I had no money. So like it was like all well and good to say I'll buy you out, but how do you buy somebody out with no money? So like, and it was very, very difficult to try and buy her out over time, because I was like, well, maybe we could do a deal that was like, I can buy you out over a period of time. But then it's hard to then, again, like, what is the value? Da, 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 da. And so like, if that became a very, very difficult thing to try and like figure out like how I could buy her out with the company's money. So that was a cluster like of like, it's actually, I think that was an impossible equation to figure out, which would never have worked. And in which case, I think if I hadn't come across the guy who eventually bought her, like by chance, I probably would have exited just for like I wouldn't have known what to do, and like I didn't want to go forward, like, and it was a tough period, but like, and I don't it was hard. And so what happened though is that I found I knew of a guy, GB, who I played rugby with the Pirates like 20 years before. And like, I'd always like known he was like a super good businessman. I kind of knew that he was in a business that was similar to what we did. He's in like more contracting. He's got recruitment, but he's got a like blue collar, and he's got a flipping really good business. And I actually went to him initially to help me value our business so that I could buy it. That was how I actually went to him. I was like, man, help me value this thing so that I can make Ali a good offer. And then through the whole thing, like when it started going out, I said to him, but listen, bro, can I tell you the story? Like at that point, we'd started consulting. We had like, our brand was good. We had good recruiters, and he'd helped me create a value, but I had no cash. And so what eventually happened is I then went back to him and I said, bro, like, what about you? You want to back me? If you want to back me, I've got a great business here, and I promise you, but like, for the price that we've set it as here, like, I know that like, if we can get this right, like, blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of like essentially like if you were pitching to a VC, like you got to get them to believe in the story, and you got to get them believe in you. And thankfully GB did. And eventually Jeeves made an offer to Ali, like, and so he, with cash, made an offer to her, because then that cash is like set in stone. He said, you will have this money if you're prepared to sell me these shares today, and so that creates a very, very different, that's a very different transaction to me trying to say, I want to buy this with the money I promise I'm going to make in this business over the next however many years. You know what I mean? And so like that was a very different way of having a conversation with an exiting person, because money matters, and it's the cost, from my perspective, it's the cost of money. The cost of money for me is that, like, I'm still not, I have never been, and am not the majority shareholder of our business. Mex or Manu Clocks is the majority shareholder of our business. But once he came in and was like very much like big brother, like that whole thing, you don't know. Like, let me tell you, having somebody who's a very good, shrewd businessman with a strong balance sheet and blah, 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 makes you want to act that way. Like it was like, we were kind of scrapping it out, like not knowing our own value. And then when he got involved, he was excellent at guiding me. He was excellent at building me as a far better, I guess, businessman, because I'm a service guy. I'm not a businessman. Like like I want to do something the best, like whether that's at the expense of profit or at the expense of blah, 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 he's been an unbelievably good guide for me in terms of like building out our now business. You know what I mean? So we've now gone from this thing that delivered good services to this like really like a good business that delivers great services. And that's taken a bit of time. And I think that was the, that's a big moment. But anyway, the founder thing, just to finish that off, is that like, it's not easy, because like I said, perception is reality, and whether my perception is real or right or wrong, and whether L's is real and right or wrong, or Brett's is and whatever, like it's like they will, what I mean? They will always feel how they feel, and I will always feel how I feel, and somewhere in the middle is a truth, and and let me tell you, I don't think it matters what your shareholders agreements say. It doesn't matter, like that obviously from a monetary perspective, but let me tell you, like all those things like don't mean anything, because it's about feelings and it's about relationships, and so I guess my practical advice, or my practical sort of like lesson, is that like when you are getting into bed with somebody, like best, like you spend lots of time with that person and like really know that this is like a lifer. And if it isn't a lifer, and if something goes wrong and people change and things like that, you've got to have like understood this in the beginning. You know what I mean? Like that, like you've got to have understood like how would we change or you know what I mean? So like, because it wasn't bad behavior that anybody left. It wasn't like, well, yeah, exactly, right. But like, it wasn't like bad behavior. Like I didn't want Ali to exit because she was shit. I wanted to do because I wanted to go differently, And so those are how difficult is that conversation, right? Like it's not about, it's not you, it's me. But like, fuck, like how ridiculous, But like that's a difficult thing, because
it's not you, it's me. But it's also me, and I want to take the house and the kids.
Complicated. And so like, and that's why, like I said to you, I was nervous about this podcast, because like I wanted to make sure that I did it justice in a way that doesn't make me look like I'm some shining light at the end of this. It's like, it was such a difficult period. It caused me huge amounts of sleepless nights. It for a long period of time, like cocked up relationships. And thankfully with time, and thankfully like, over like things can be okay, you know what I mean? But like, it's like none of that stuff I would want to have ever gone through, but we did, and it is what it is. And I fucking love this place. Like I love this business so much that like, I literally like, that's what made it worth fighting for me a little bit, is that like, I really do love it. Like I love what we do. I love what I get to do on a day-to-day, like, and so like it was something that I was prepared to fight for, and still prepared to fight for. Like if like I'm the nicest guy in the whole world, but like, let me tell you what I'd need to do, that to protect this thing, to protect the house that we've created here. Like I would, I could be much less nice, in terms of like just the protection of the people and this thing that we've got.
So it sounds like you're basically a walking case study for crucial conversations, right? Do you know that book?
I don't know the book, but I can interpret what a crucial conversation looks
Yeah.
like.
So check it out. I think it'll highly resonate. I think because this is also always such a consistent lesson with entrepreneurs. It's always like it's the tricky thing when you're in the honeymoon phase. You don't want to think about the divorce, right? You worry that it's going to like sour the relationship there, but it's actually so necessary. And it's like there's a level of the people that like I definitely have to give credit to people that do that right, because there's a level of maturity that is required to be able to have that conversation in the early stages. But it's one of those tricky things that we all hear the lesson, but we always seem to have to learn it ourselves, right? And I think just even with that, uh, for anyone who's currently, going through a challenging part with their co-founders, with their shareholders, like they're either wanting to exit or they're wanting their co-founders or their other shareholders to exit. I think just in terms of how you handled those conversations or how you would handle them moving forward, like what's the kind of approach and recommendations and advice you'd give based on what you've learned having done it multiple times?
I think that the biggest things I did is I let my feelings of like unhappiness or whatever go like way too long and never ever had the conversations like early enough. So I acquiesce by nature. Like I like harmony. I like people to be happy. I don't like to have. I'm not a comfortable person in conflicts. I'm not. It's not my vibe at all. So I think that my biggest mistakes is that I let those feelings go way too far before addressing them. So like that's the biggest mistake I made was like allowing those feelings to get so big that maybe they could have been fixed, but by the time I was prepared to talk about them, I was too far gone. So that's probably a huge lesson in terms of like, if you acquiesce by nature, and that's a lot of us. And I don't think a lot of people are comfortable in conflict. Like I don't like conflict, shit, And so if you are, some people are super happy in conflict, but I wasn't, and and I've had to get much better at it. And even in leading now, like I've had to get much better at very fast, like at very quickly having hard conversations with people, even inside of our business, let alone shareholders or partners or any of that sort of stuff. Like I've had to get much better at it, and could still grow immensely in that department. So that's the first lesson. I think the first lesson was that, and eventually, like, I mean, what I did do is eventually, like, I actually wrote down the conversation. So when I had the conversation eventually, because the the consequence of acquiescing is that you never say actually what you want to say. And so I had like bullet pointed feelings, And remember, like all of these are feelings. Hey? These aren't like you didn't hit your target or you do this or it was like I feel, I feel, I feel, I feel, I feel. And so, but that's life. Like I mean, we're all human beings. So like this is a big, big portion of it, because you also like eventually like my wife will probably attest to this, but like it's like you also become a miserable shithead. Fuck. I became just such a miserable human being. Like, and then it's like so to what is worth what? You know what I mean? And so like so so is it worth what cost? Like is all these things worth like not really wanting to like not loving what you do, whatever. And I know that that's easier said than done, but I guess like I was I promise you, Karen, and I think maybe this is one thing that maybe is maybe not understood, or maybe I haven't said it enough, is that like I was always prepared to also leave. Like I had done it once, I could do it again. Like I knew I had a skill. I knew like I have always believed, and I think that even if let's say for instance, I don't know, we have some atomic bomb that hits our business and I make some colossal fuck up in terms of strategy and we go all the way and we lose everything. I always know I have got a skill that I could start again tomorrow. I don't need to go and get employed anywhere. I don't need to go, like, I could start tomorrow as a recruiter and go back to my absolute core. I could go find a customer and I could go onto LinkedIn and I could start again. So there was always I guess
There's always a
there
fallback.
was always a safety net for me.
Mhm.
Yeah, always. Like I always knew that like I had a skill, which is quite cool, right? Because like who would have thought that like recruitment, which is not like you don't grow up wanting to be a recruiter. Like nobody like dreams of being a recruiter. But let me tell you, it is one of the most epic skills to have, because I still don't ever believe I'll need a job. Like I said, if this thing like imploded tomorrow, I can wake up as Shaun Raaff and I can go and find people to want to work as a recruiter for me, because at the end of the day, a customer just wants the best person in that seat. They don't give a fuck who they use, and it's like, if I can go and start again, like, so anyway, so point being is that, like, I know we can do it better, but point being is that at the end of the day, people still need people to be employed, but you know what I mean? Like, they just, so as a service or as a thing. So anyway, so having said that, like I always was prepared to also leave. And at any point in time, I was also prepared to shake hands, say, cool, man, you want this so badly. Like, if you want this so badly, and that is an absolute truth, like, cross my heart, if Brett or Ali or any of them had said, like, I want this more than you, I was also prepared to leave. Like, even though I loved it, like, I love it with all my heart, like, I was also prepared to leave it. And I guess that also, like, allows for, like, I guess, a little bit of freedom in terms of, like, knowing that, like, you're not damned if you do and damned if you don't. Like, it's you're gonna be fine either way.
So I'm gonna. I thought of a better question to ask you now than I did earlier, but that was gold, by the way. If you knew future you was going to go through something like this again, what advice would you give yourself?
I don't even have, like, a gut response to that. Like, I don't even have because future you doesn't really exist ever, like, and I think that, like, if anything, yeah, it's such a hard question. And truthfully, dude, like, that, like, the reason I became a school teacher and the reason I didn't go into business out of varsity or whatever is that my dad had been, like, a corporate oak his whole life and had suffered with depression because of jobs and and he told me to follow my passion, and he always believed that I made a huge amount of value in the schools that I was at. And if it weren't for my dad passing away, like, my dad passed away 10 years ago or 11 years ago, and if it weren't for him having not died, I probably still would have been teaching. And because I didn't want to let him down, like, I didn't want to, like, make him feel that I was, like, selling my souls to the devil, like, it was a weird thing, but, like, I have found so much purpose in what I do now, but, like, I wouldn't have done it. So, like, future Shaun, like, also wouldn't have, like, if future Shaun's dad had still been alive, Shaun probably be still, part of a school and whatever. But, like, if to try, your man, I think it's like, you got to have those conversations early. Like, the minute, because we could have fixed them, you know what I mean? So I'm of no doubt that potentially, like, if I'd been more honest about my feelings, if I'd been more upfront about the way I felt, it would have given Ali much more chance to maybe change or whatever, you know what I mean? And so, like, so maybe if I had been better at, like, having those conversations much earlier, like, who knows? Maybe it would have differentiated things. Maybe we would have never got to a point where I thought I had to leave or we had to split, And all of those decisions were my decisions, by the way. Like, it wasn't anybody else's. Like, I got to that point, not anybody else. And so, and that's probably as a consequence of not having had those conversations, like, really early. And so maybe, and again, like, hindsight 2020, and also, like, now we'll never know. So it's one of those things.
Yeah, man, it's. I mean, I think I don't know if I've told you this before, but my full name is actually Cameron. Easier said than done, Coutts. And so, like, that is part of all, like, the vice and stuff that I talk about. But a simple, like, quote that I have in my head that helps me actually get courage to have these conversations is the fact that you always have a choice. And that choice is either between tolerating long-term dysfunction. Yeah, I'm going to just do that again. You've always got a choice. The option one is tolerating long-term dysfunction, or two, handling short-term discomfort. Either way, it's not going to be pleasant, but you get the choice of which path to go down.
Interestingly, that lives in leading anywhere. So it that's just not at a shareholder partner level. That's at, like, key employees. That's at key customers. Those are things that you get better at over
with your
time,
wife.
right?
That's with your kids. That's with everything.
Well, yeah, but and if you're talking about, like, an entrepreneurial journey, like, you think that crucial conversations are, like, only at this, like, super high level, like, honesty in crucial conversations, like, and again, like, I have significantly improved on them and still have a significant amount of growth to go in that area. Like, I know that still is, like, and it's because I'm, like, a harmony guy. Like, it's because conflict for me is, like, it's the I don't know if you've ever done like a Lumina profile or whatever. Like, it's the conflict thing is it's the thing that makes me want to curl up and die. Like, it's the because I want, but I've got better at it. Like, I have got much better at, like, having that, like, thing, like, right now. Like, I don't wait. I don't sit on it. I don't like sit in my feelings, because sitting in my feelings is that you like stew and it makes it worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. I've just been much better at like going like, nope, right now we're having this chat. Come, like this is, and what are that? And sometimes that's even customer, huh? So, the hardest crucial conversations are to have is with customers, because when you are growing and surviving, it's like the customer's always right. It's kind of not that true. Like the customer's not always right, because what we do is we are specialists at what we do, you know? And your customer doesn't sit and recruit all day. Your customer sits and does what they do the best all day. And so like, critical and tough conversations, even with customers, to go like, we don't like, your process is failing you, or we need to change something inside of how you're doing this recruitment, which is, we would never have done that 5 or 6 years ago. 5 or 6 years ago, it's, please, like let us do this work for you. Like, yes, boss, whatever you want to do is how you want to do it. And like now, because we own our space so much better, and our confidence of like knowing that we are very good at what we do has allowed us to be like so much better at having even difficult conversations with customers, even with candidates, And so again, time, learning, like I said to you earlier, like at 30 years old, you think you know everything. And now at 40, you recognize how little or how much more there is still to know.
That also makes me think of the difference between kindness and niceness, is the fact that like kindness is, for the sake of our relationship, there's something that I need to tell you. But or for your sake, I need you to know this for your benefit, and it might not be pleasant. Versus niceness is about, how can I ensure that with that I remain liked in this situation, and that can obviously often lead to dysfunction. And you might not see it because it's like, because you end up feeling good in like the interaction, the transaction of the relationship, but it doesn't really benefit anyone.
I read a great book, another like unbelievable book. And when I keep saying read books, I listen to books. My wife will completely judge me if I make it sound like I read lots of books, but I listen to lots and lots of books. But like, I listened to a book called The 15 Commitments to Conscious Leadership, a guy called Jim Detmer. And that book was like super transformative to me as in a way in which I lead. And yeah, that's like one of the like, would be on the top of the pile of like any business book or like leadership book that's super easy to like understand and resonate in terms of like practical ways of like leading people. And I've been lucky. Like I've led people my whole life. Like I've always been drawn to leadership. Like I love to lead. I love the responsibility of leading. Like I love, it's I don't know if that's a natural, if it's but like I love the responsibility of leading people. Like I've always been drawn to wanting to lead. Like I want to captain the team. Like like at school, I want to be a prefect. I want to lead. Like I've always wanted to be like a person in leadership, because I love that. I really, really love that, like that responsibility. And even though I had years and years and years of responsibility in terms of, even though I had years and years of responsibility in terms of having led lots of teams, like I was a coach, so I coached hundreds of teams, whether that be cricket or rugby or whatever it is. Like that book really, really helped me in terms of like understanding the true depth of what leadership could be, if that makes sense.
Shaun, thank you for, honestly, your candor, your authenticity, your transparency, your humility, everything that you've shared here. I think you've done the name on your chest a good service, because it is humanity, and you've been very human in this. I think you've really communicated your humanness, that of your team, but also the importance of humans in business. And like, really, it's all about people. And that's one of the biggest lessons that I've gained from you in this conversation. So I guess the last two things that I want to know is like, well, one, what does the next 6 to 18 months look like for you and humanity?
So we've taken on a lot this year. So like, as we talked about, like, so as we'd like built up this buffer now of like, we'd made some money. Now we've taken some big shots. So the brand, we built an ERR business called Employee Global now. Dev Shack is big. Like we really think we're onto a big thing with Dev Shack. Like I'd be excited. Like once that thing is off the ground, like I think the Dev Shack thing is amazing. It's like a force for good, but that does something really, really cool. So we have a huge 6 months in front of us. We have a huge 12 months in front of us, actually, because we're basically like with this engine that is our recruitment business and our consulting, which is a little bit like further down the road as well in terms of like establishment. Like those three divisions / businesses have got like a huge period in front of them where it's like it's weird. Like they are like sucking cash. Like it's a and like and again, like it brings you back to like this like, oh God, like it brings you back. It like takes you back like so many years in terms of like, because now you're spending this money and it doesn't produce any money just yet, and you're like, so yeah, we've got a like a monstrous 6 to 12 months in front of us, like trying to get these things like up and running. And like weirdly, like I've got to also be, again, like to my own words, I've got to be like prepared for some of those things not to work. But if they do, like awesome, I'm like really surrounded by like the people who are like taking the charge of those things. And again, like I think that maybe another lesson like that I guess that like has worked for me is that like I'm not a guy who has to feel like I'm in control of everything. I'm really, really good at like handing over control to people. And that's the lesson I learned at having to be a schoolboy coach on the side of a field, because once those players are on the field, you can do nothing. And so you have to be super comfortable knowing that like you've done so much, that you've done as much as you can on the training ground, and you've got to like allow players to play. You can't, it's out of your control. And therefore, like, I guess the comfort and the lessons that I learned from like 10 or 12 or 13 years of coaching is now like really setting me up for like being comfortable that if I like believe that I've got a good player, they've got to do it, and I really do. I believe so fully in the people that are like trying to take those things forward. And I'm not like really like attached, like from an ego perspective, to like wanting to be the guy at the front, like that was what I said to you, like weirdly, like even being on this podcast is that like I've never ever felt that like I need to be in the forefront of this business. Never ever. Like I've always felt that I'm so super comfortable being like the coach on the sideline who watches people succeed. And so yeah, so we got a big 6 months, big 12 months, maybe 18 months. I don't know how long it's going to take. Like, but I know that like we've got a value system inside of our business that is like team first, give a shit. Those are the two big things on our wall. Like ours aren't like integrity and trust. It's like give a shit. And you know what I mean? It's like give a shit. Like just that is the big thing.
Epic, man. I love the fact that you finished that off with your values as well. Finally, what's the one question that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you that you'd like to answer now?
I knew I should have thought about this. I've watched all of your podcasts, and I knew that there was something I wasn't thinking about while I was on my run this morning. I think maybe the thing that you didn't ask too much about, even though I said it a lot more, was like how and what was I looking for in the people that I brought in? Like how did I go about those like decisions as to like what was the process I followed to like really think that like this was the person that I needed to like partner myself with to like go forward?
Dude, that's a great one. Yeah, as a person who runs a recruitment business, I should ask how you recruit your people. Yeah, please.
Sometimes the shoemaker doesn't shine his own shoes as well as he should. But it's certainly something we got much better at as time's gone by. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just if you had to say a quick one, what do you think some of the things that you implement yourself for your own business as well as for your recruiters that leads to getting the best hires in the best seats?
I think it's depth. Like it's depth and time. I don't think people spend enough time in interview process. Like I think it's time. And it's hard because like people want like instant gratification, specifically if it's like changing jobs. And I know that like we talk a lot about like making like, your processes have got to be like speedy, because like while you're trying to make people change decisions, like time sometimes can kill deals in our world. Like time is bad, but I also think that time is good. Like it's time in between time that kills deals, not time in doing it, if that makes sense. And so I think that like if you can like maybe balance that thing out about like how much time can you spend with somebody before bringing them into your business, but not having the time between those times be too
like
long.
One interview a week for like 6 weeks as a recruitment process, for example. Like that's shooting.
Yeah, exactly. So how do you condense as much time that you can spend with somebody without it taking too much time?
Love it. I love the fact that you gave it simply as well. Shaun, thank you for being on the Founder Files, man. This has been absolutely epic. I'm excited for the next couple of months and years for you, and excited for round 2.
I appreciate it, buddy. Thanks for having me. Ciao, ciao.
So as you can tell, Shaun clearly has a playbook for his recruitment team, for his customer experience, and how he's been able to continuously grow this part of the business with the same group of people. And I obviously want to translate that to everything in the scaling journey requires a playbook that we need in our businesses, but also playbooks for the right point in time. That's exactly why I developed the Founder Playbook, to figure out where it is that you are right now, where there's certain kind of gaps in your scaling journey around how strategy is crafted, how you've kind of calibrated your resources, your structure, your people, and how you're executing and how you're managing yourself, so that you can really cross this gap between being good and great, and so that you can accelerate the scaling journey and also just have probably a bit of peace of mind. So this is taken from all of the insights from all the podcasts that I've done throughout the existence of the Founder Files and all 150 plus clients that we've worked with over the past 4 years, to really consolidate what are these common themes around excellence in how people craft their strategy, calibrate resources, execute and manage themselves. And there's an assessment that you can do for free. There's no email, there's no sign up required. I'm not trying to build a list. This is me trying to add value back to the audience and help you turn these insights into action. So go to playbook.metavolve.co, link below, and yeah, it'll take you about 15 minutes end to end. You'll complete the assessment, get your results, get some tailored recommendations to you, and then have some suggested next moves so that you can implement those over the next 30 to 90 days and take your own playbook into action in scaling your business. So that's it for this episode with Humanity SA and Shaun Raaff. Thank you once again for listening to a full episode of the Founder Files. So if you haven't clicked like, follow, subscribe, please do so now. It is the best way to make me feel happy as the host. And also remember to check out the playbook. Right, it's going to take you only 15 minutes in total to do it, and I'm confident that you're going to enjoy the value of it. But until next time, keep building, keep learning, and keep telling your story.